Hi everybody, Brittany Trumpy here. I just finished my 16th book for the year, and this might be my favorite book that I have read, not only this year, but probably in a really long time. It was a great rebound from my last read that was a little bit of a disappointment, but honestly, I could have bet money on this being good. I am obsessed with this author. I just finished The Women by Kristin. She has never let me down. She has never failed me. She's that good, okay? Like every book that I have read from her has always been 10 out of 10. They're so well written. She makes the world so immersive, and basically she's known for historical fiction or historical fiction books that are loosely based on real people that existed and did incredible things. So two of the other books that I've read from her are Nightingale and Winter Garden. So Nightingale is about World War II France, where these two sisters are kind of trying to survive the war. One of them is part of the resistance and really doing some very dangerous kind of crazy things to try and save her country. Meanwhile, the other is she's married and her husband goes off to war and she has kids, so she's fighting her own fight that is just kind of a world away. Like they're just total polar opposites in personality and in what they're dealing with, but they're both fighting these amazing battles, and that book made me cry like a baby at the end. So 10 out of 10, recommend The Nightingale. I also read Winter Garden by her as well, and that one was really interesting. It had to do with kind of post World War II Soviet Russia, and it took place in modern time, and then also kind of storytelling and flashbacks to before the mother had left the Soviet Republic or USSR, or I forget exactly. It's been a while since I read it, but that book also makes you cry like a baby, and this book made me cry like a baby. So basically this book is about a woman who signs up for the Army Corps of Nurses in the 70s, or she signs up in the 60s, I guess, and goes to Vietnam. So that was the first thing that was really interesting about this book. It wasn't the same typical time period that I've seen Kristin write about. So that was kind of cool. It's a different war, it's a different time period, so there's kind of different struggles and aspects, and the characters themselves are just a little bit different because it's a more modern age, I guess you could say. Basically, I have to give you spoilers in this review. In order to properly discuss it, there's going to be a number of spoilers. So if you have not read it yet and you're concerned about spoilers, maybe come back after you do. I definitely recommend it. It's an amazing book. Anyway, so I just need to be blunt about this. I loved this book, and there's something about the way that she writes where she can have, in the first 50 to 100 pages, 47,000 different things can happen, and the pace of it works out really well. You don't feel rushed, it doesn't feel overdone. But I'm not even joking. I think within the first 100 pages, the brother dies, she signs up, she goes off to war, she has her first mezcal, she has her first flirtation. Like, there's just so much within the first 100 pages, and I feel like if any other author tried to jam that much activity and plot and character development into a kind of short page count, it would just feel rushed and chaotic and would probably just not go well. But Kristin can do that, and she's done it before, and she'll do it again, and she did it once again with this book, and she does it just so successfully. So some of the big things that I've noticed with this book, I really was genuinely surprised that Rye ended up being the quote-unquote bad guy. I wasn't anticipating that. I definitely thought there was an opportunity that, maybe he wasn't dead, especially when she got involved in the work with POW and MIA organizations. I was like, oh, this might be kind of setting up the opportunity for either one of her former love interest or her brother to come back. So I kind of saw that coming potentially, but I didn't know that it was going to be specifically Rye, and then I didn't know that it was actually going to be like the worst thing possible, because then his story unravels and you realize that he's a really bad guy and he's terrible. So that was kind of surprising. I kind of thought also that towards the end of the book, regardless of the POW MIA kind of plot twist, I thought she was going to end up running into Coyote, which was a guy who was interested in her, but she wasn't interested in him, and it just really nothing ever happened. They danced and hung out a couple of times, but I thought for sure that she was going to run into him and that they were going to sort of reconnect. She didn't. She ended up running into Jamie, who was one of the doctors that she fell in love with originally, but they never really got together because he was married at the time and she didn't want to do that. So anyway, that was interesting. I didn't expect Fry to be the bad guy. I was expecting Coyote, and then all of a sudden it's Jamie. And like also the easy kind of option would have been to have her brother come back, and then they could have been supporting each other. But it wasn't the brother either because she just didn't write it that way. Anyway, great. I loved it. Wonderful. There were so many times in this book where you were just so frustrated with Frankie. That's the main character. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it makes her human, it makes her relatable, but there are plenty of times throughout this book where you just want to slap her and like tell her to get her stuff together and to like figure it out. But honestly, at the same time, you can't relate to that. I know personally I can't relate to half the things she's been through. I was never in an active war zone. I've never been like elbow deep in a guy's abdomen trying to save his life. She's a war nurse. She has seen some crazy stuff. And so it's kind of like, and, you know, of course you have to give her grace and you have to let her kind of find her way through her struggle, which is what pretty much the second half of the book is her at home dealing with her PTSD and kind of wrapping her head around everything that she's been through. But there are so many times where you're just so frustrated with her and you want to just scream like, get it together, Frankie, like figure it out. So she's frustrating, but in a kind of relatable, understanding sort of way. Again, the time period is really unique. I don't know if it was just me. I mean, obviously I've taken U.S. history. I know about a lot of things that happened in the 60s and the 70s, but there are references throughout this book where it just kind of made me stop and think for a second. I didn't realize all of these things were taking place at the same time. Like, she references the Summer of Love, which I knew that was kind of related to Vietnam, but she references Charles Manson and that like girls are going missing in Seattle, which is Ted Bundy, and there's just so many different like small references throughout the book where you're like, oh wow, like this is all happening in the same time period. And it kind of just made me realize how chaotic and tumultuous the 60s and 70s were. I mean, I've always known that they were a chaotic time period, but this kind of put it into perspective. Like, not only was there this war going on and there were all these cultural issues going on, she talks about the civil rights movement and the March on Washington and MLK and all these different things, and it was a lot of time, a lot of change and a lot of chaos over a really short period of time. And this book kind of helped to put that into perspective for me. The characters are great. Frankie has an amazing kind of character arc and character development. Who she is at the beginning and who she is at the end are just completely different people, which is understandable. Again, she's been through a lot of stuff. She's dealing with the trauma of going to war and everything she's seen, but also just the trauma of some things that happen in life through relationships and people being unfaithful or not being honest with you, things like that. So even some of the things that are not relatable are actually still relatable in a roundabout kind of way, if that makes sense. Anyway, 5 out of 5. I'd give it 6 out of 5 if I could. This was such a good book. A lot of people I've seen a couple of people not really being into it, saying that Kristin Hanna kind of took everything in the kitchen sink and threw it into a book. She did, but I feel like she has the right to do so, and she's the only one who can do it well, so I'm not mad about it. Great book. Again, if you've never read any of her other books, Winter Garden or Nightingale, definitely do it. They are so good. Just time and time again, Kristin Hanna just knocks it out of the park. So hopefully you guys can pick it up. If you've read this book, hopefully you did, because otherwise I just ruined it for you guys. If you've read it and you had similar thoughts or feelings, or maybe you were one of the people who didn't enjoy it as much, let me know why you didn't like it, or, you know, let me know if you agree and it was as sensational as I feel it was. Okay, my next book on deck, this will be number 17, is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. I think it's Fikry. Not 100% sure yet. It's a little one. It's a shorty. I think it's just over, just shy of 300 or just over 250 pages. So I'll kind of hammer that one out probably pretty quick. Again, I've heard good things about it. Nothing crazy. I don't think it's new. It does say it is a now a major motion picture. So I did not know this was a movie either. So maybe I'll look up the movie after this. Anyway, thank you guys. If you've read The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, let me know. Or if you've seen the movie, I guess, let me know your thoughts and feelings on it. Please no spoilers. But yeah, definitely get The Women by Kristin Hannah. I don't think there are a lot of books that are written about the women who served in Vietnam, which is a huge theme throughout this book. Obviously, it's the title, but it's also the struggle of it. You know, there are multiple times where Frankie goes to get help because she can tell that she's crumbling and she's about to fall apart, and she goes to a VA center or she goes to a psychiatrist or what have you, and they just say, women weren't in Vietnam. What are you talking about? And they practically laugh her out of the room. And it's crazy to me, or it's crazy to think that that's real and that's true. And I know it is. I'm not discounting that. Like, I know that that's a reality, and Vietnam vets in general were not treated especially well when they returned home from war. But it's just crazy to have somebody experience all of this chaos and then come home and say, I need help. And people think, what are you talking about? Like, you didn't go, you didn't do anything. Or there's multiple people who are saying, oh, it's so nice that you want to be here to, like, support and understand your husband. And she's like, no, I'm the vet. I'm the Vietnam vet. I'm not here to support my husband or my boyfriend or my whatever. It's me. Anyway, it's such a good book. I could talk about it for days. Anyway, I love you guys, and I will see you next week with another review.